Eli wandered farther than usual that afternoon, boots crunching over moss and soft earth, the filtered sunlight casting moving patterns across the forest floor. The air smelled electric, faintly metallic, like the sky itself was holding its breath. The forest edge near the old ridgeline had been off-limits since terraforming reshaped parts of Earth after first contact, but rules had never meant much to Eli, not when curiosity called. He paused at the sound. Not wind. Not an animal. It was a low, broken noise, half growl, half sob, cut off abruptly, like something too tired to keep making it. It stirred something deep in his chest. He hesitated, looked back the way he'd come, then pushed forward. Past the thicket of thorny vines, he found the source. Curled near a fallen tree, barely more than a skeleton wrapped in cracked scales, was a creature no textbook had ever prepared him for. Small, maybe half his size, shaped like a lizard but wrong in 100 ways. Wings shredded. Chains, heavy and alien, dug into its limbs, pinning it to a rusted metal stake jammed into the soil. Its eyes met his. They were violet, slitted like a cat's, yet unmistakably sentient. Not wild. Not rabid. Just tired. There was no plea in them, only resignation, as if it had long since accepted whatever end waited. Eli swallowed the sudden lump in his throat. Every instinct screamed to run. To tell someone. But he didn't. He crouched, slow and careful, and reached into his bag for the half sandwich he hadn't eaten. He tore it and tossed the pieces gently, inching closer until they landed just in reach. The creature sniffed. After a pause, it lurched forward, trembling, and devoured them. It didn't speak. But its gaze stayed on him the whole time. Eli didn't understand why, but he returned the next day. And the day after. He brought water, then bandages. At first, the creature flinched whenever he approached. Then it began to lean forward instead. He spoke softly, narrating everything he did, more for himself than the creature. On the 4th day, it nudged his hand. It had no voice, but it tried to communicate. When Eli showed it his name on a notepad, it pressed a claw to the E, then again to the L. Eli, he said aloud. That's me. The creature blinked slowly. He took that as understanding. He pointed at it, then to the pad. You. It paused, then raised a trembling claw and scratched a crude set of shapes into the dirt. Not letters, something else. Symbols. But one repeated often. A soft clicking sound came from its throat. Eli mimicked it. Kale? A faint nod. So Kale it became. Kale healed slowly. The scales along his ribs were cracked, some missing entirely. His wings looked nearly useless. His breathing was shallow, sometimes raspy. But his eyes were alert, and his movements steadier each day. Eli smuggled supplies from home, antiseptics, gauze, protein bars. His father was a xenobiologist who barely looked up from his work. It was easy to take what he needed without questions. One afternoon, Eli noticed something new. As he approached, Kale's shackles hummed faintly, then clicked. A pulse ran through them. Eli stopped, watching. Kale stared at him, and the chains retracted slightly, as if sensing Eli's presence. That night, Eli couldn't sleep. He searched archived alien physiology reports, looked for anything resembling Kale. Nothing matched. The closest was a footnote in an old research paper referencing a subspecies of the Draxel, a powerful, draconian race that once ruled several moons before humanity's diplomatic expansion forced their retreat. They were believed extinct. Or hiding. The paper mentioned failure offspring, born without full strength, often discarded. Eli felt a chill. Kale wasn't just abandoned. He was condemned. The next morning, he arrived early. Kale's eyes lit up at his approach. Eli sat cross-legged beside him, offering dried fruit. You're not a failure. Kale tilted his head. Eli tapped his chest. You're alive. That means you matter. Kale blinked. In the distance, thunder rolled, not from the sky, but from something deeper, metallic and vast. Eli didn't look back. His focus stayed on Kale, on the weight of that simple truth. The world didn't have to know yet. But Eli had decided something. Cale wasn't going to die here. Not while he was still breathing. Cale's wounds slowly closed, the dull sheen of his scales returning with faint color. His limbs steadied, his wings still torn but no longer lifeless. He remained quiet, but his reactions were sharper. When Eli spoke, Cale watched his lips, tilting his head in focus. He began to mimic sounds, not words, but syllables, growing closer with each attempt. Communication deepened. Cale scratched shapes into dirt with clawed fingers, combining symbols with gestures. Eli responded with drawings, notes, nods. Together, they built a private language of meaning, a bridge neither had with anyone else. Cale's gaze lingered on the sky. Every time a bird flew past, his eyes narrowed. Once, he extended his torn wing and tried to lift it. The pain forced him down again. He didn't cry out, only lowered his head, defeated. Eli knelt beside him, pressing a hand to his shoulder, feeling the muscles twitch under his skin. Cale didn't pull away. One day, Cale placed his clawed hand against Eli's temple and held it there. Images, blurred and fragmented, flooded Eli's thoughts. Alien landscapes, towers of obsidian and flame, armored figures, harsh commands. A cold room. Chains. Then the silent, burning walk into exile. The Draxel hadn't just abandoned Cale. They'd done it deliberately. He wasn't lost, he was sentenced. A failure, Eli realized. Too weak, too small. Left in the wilderness as a lesson. Not to Cale, but to others. A cultural purge disguised as tradition. Eli's hands clenched as he processed it. He knew humans had flaws. Wars, prejudice, greed. But this wasn't failure. This was cruelty wrapped in ceremony. A young life dismissed as useless simply for not meeting expectations. Cale didn't just survive, he fought to stay alive when no one wanted him to. Eli began sneaking more supplies. High-protein nutrients, pain relievers, thermal packs. His father barely noticed the inventory shrinking. Eli didn't care if he did. Every bruise that faded on Cale's side made the risk worth it. He also started bringing books. Simple ones, children's tales first. He read aloud while Cale listened. Slowly, Cale began mimicking words. Not perfectly. His throat wasn't made for Earth's languages, but the effort was clear. He liked stories where the small triumphed over giants. Especially when those giants underestimated them. At school, Eli's teachers noticed changes. He was distracted, drawing symbols in notebooks, yawning through classes. His classmates whispered. He ignored them. No one else mattered. Suspicion grew at home. One night, his father confronted him. A medical scanner showed activity near the forest border, odd biosigns. He asked if Eli had been exploring. Eli denied it. Barely. That night, Cale tried to speak more clearly. He said, Eli. For the first time. Then, safe. Then, with effort, not go. The message was clear. Cale was afraid Eli would vanish, like everyone else had. Eli made a promise. I'm not leaving. Ever. Cale didn't smile. His face wasn't built for that. But something in his eyes changed. He trusted Eli now, fully. He wasn't just recovering. He was learning what trust meant. One afternoon, Cale attempted to rise. Slowly, shakily, he stood. Wings half unfurled, tail twitching for balance. Eli didn't cheer. He watched in silence, letting Cale own that moment. For the first time, Cale looked proud. That same day, Eli discovered old schematics in his father's files, data on alien tech used during early conflicts. The symbols matched Cale's bindings. The chains were not just restraints. They dampened neural signals, limiting Cale's natural abilities. They were a weapon disguised as imprisonment. Eli stared at the files long into the night, mind racing. Whoever did this wanted Cale to die without even knowing what he could be. That alone was reason enough to stop it. He returned with a toolkit and small frequency disruptor used in xenobiology labs. Cale flinched as Eli approached with the device, but held still. A single pulse unlocked the ankle restraints. The hum ceased. Cale's body shuddered, like his cells were waking up. He collapsed, not from pain, but release. Like a dam had broken. For hours after, he slept. Dreamless, safe. When he woke, Cale looked different. Taller. Eyes sharper. Something dormant had begun to stir. Eli knew then, Cale wasn't helpless anymore. But more than that, Cale had become something dangerous. Not because of what he could do. Because of what he now believed. Someone had fought for him. And that changed everything. Cale's progress accelerated. Without the suppressive chains, his energy returned in unpredictable surges. He moved faster, reacted quicker. One morning, he accidentally scorched the ground near Eli's boots. The burst of heat had come from a silent flick of his claw. He froze, eyes wide with guilt. Eli didn't flinch. Instead, he stepped closer, placed a hand on Cale's shoulder, and said, "We'll figure it out." Cale's abilities weren't just physical. His awareness expanded daily. He sensed movement before it happened, tracked thoughts with uncanny precision. When Eli felt nervous, Cale knew. When he lied to his father about the late nights or missing supplies, Cale always looked disappointed, not because of the lie, but because he knew Eli hated it. The shelter Eli used to hide Cale became a crude lab. Solar lamps. Training weights. Blank notebooks now filled with alien glyphs translated side by side with human words. Cale learned to read faster than Eli expected. He asked questions, silent then spoken. Words like, "Why?" and "Worth?" dominated his vocabulary. Eli explained everything. Earth history, Draxel history, the first contact, the uneasy peace. He didn't lie. He told Cale the truth about wars, failures, betrayals. He wanted Cale to understand both the worst and best of what humans were. Cale, in turn, shared fragmented memories, some too painful to finish. When he described the Draxel Council, Eli realized how deeply fear was used as control. Strength was law. Mercy was weakness. Cale wasn't just cast out for being frail. He was rejected for not embodying their cruelty. One evening, Cale whispered something new. "I don't want to go back." "You won't," Eli answered without hesitation. Their peace shattered a day later. The ship arrived without warning. High-altitude scans detected it first. A sleek, black vessel hovering silently above the outer zone. Unregistered. Alien. Eli's father mentioned it at dinner, concerned but distracted. He assumed it was a diplomatic scout. Eli knew better. He rushed to the shelter. Cale stood near the entrance, already alert. His pupils had narrowed to slits. His body radiated tension. "They're here," Cale said quietly. "Hunting." Eli's heart pounded. "For you?" Cale didn't answer. That night, Eli told his father everything. Every detail. The alien boy, the chains, the exile. He expected fury. He got silence. Then, slowly, disbelief gave way to grim understanding. "You kept this from me for weeks? He was dying. You would have let him." His father didn't deny it. But he didn't try to stop him either. Instead, he unlocked the lab's restricted tools. Neuroblockers. Holographic disruptors. Miniature defense drones originally designed for field research. "You want to protect him?" his father asked. "Then do it right." Eli worked through the night. Modified drones, calibrated sensors, repurposed tranquilizers. Cale assisted, offering insight into Draxel systems. Together, they mapped out a defense, more evasion than confrontation. The goal wasn't to win a battle. It was to survive long enough to make the hunters give up. Cale's power continued to evolve. He learned to dampen his presence, cloak his aura, manipulate thermal signatures. But it came at a cost. Each use strained him, and Eli noticed the fatigue building. "You're pushing too hard," Eli warned. "I have to be ready," Cale replied. They knew time was short. The hunters descended quietly, but not unseen. The town's perimeter defenses picked up subtle disturbances. Eli intercepted a private transmission. The Draxel had boots on the ground. They weren't here to negotiate. Cale refused to run. I fled once. It ended in chains. I won't flee again. Eli didn't argue. Instead, he adapted. He created lures, heat signatures matching Cale's, set to trigger remote decoys. They scattered the hunters, forcing them to split. The plan wasn't foolproof, but it was enough. Late that evening, as Cale rested, Eli looked at him and realized something he hadn't before. Cale wasn't the same creature he'd found, starving and shackled. He stood taller now, not just physically but in spirit. He carried himself with purpose, not fear. He spoke like someone who knew what it meant to be seen. And Eli wasn't the same boy either. He no longer followed. He led. They had become something more than alien and human. They were brothers forged in defiance. And the next day, when the Draxel finally made their move, they'd both be ready. They came at dawn. Not with noise or spectacle, but with surgical precision. Draxel assassins, 2, maybe 3, cloaked in adaptive armor that bent light around them. Eli's decoy drones caught the first one. A misstep triggered the heat trap, blinding light and a concussive pulse knocking it off balance. Cale struck without hesitation, not with brute force, but control. A single arc of plasma flared from his claw, slicing the air. The figure collapsed, armor failing, breath rattling. Not dead, but incapacitated. The second attacker learned. It avoided the decoys, tracked Cale's scent through forest residue. It moved with inhuman silence, creeping closer to the makeshift shelter. But Cale had laid false trails, leaving scent markers and subtle misdirection with Eli's help. The hunter found nothing but empty ground and recycled footprints. Eli waited, holding a compact blaster modified to non-lethal settings. His hands didn't shake. Weeks of preparation had burned hesitation out of him. The ambush was fast. A stun burst, a tackle, Cale descending from above like shadow-wrapped vengeance. The Draxel hit the dirt hard, blades spinning free from its grasp. The last one didn't approach. He waited. Cale knew him before Eli saw him. A presence too cold, too deliberate. Not just a soldier. This one commanded. Vorik, Cale whispered. The name meant something. Not just a leader, his executioner. The one who had chained him. Eli stepped back, instinctively shielding Cale. But Cale pushed forward, calm, focused. Vorik emerged slowly, helmet retracted. His face was scarred but proud. His expression was unreadable. You live, he said to Cale. That's unexpected. Cale didn't respond. You were born broken. You should not have survived exile. Yet here you are. Why? Cale's voice was quiet. Because someone believed I could. Vorik looked past him, toward Eli. Disdain flickered across his face. A human? You allowed yourself to be shaped by them. They are weak. Sentimental. That is not our way. Cale stepped between them. Your way left me to die. I choose mine. Vorik raised his hand, activating a neural disruptor. Cale didn't flinch. The pulse came, but Cale absorbed it. His body shuddered, wings tightening, then expanded, shimmering with heat. The blast dissipated against his chest like water on stone. You don't control me anymore. Eli activated a signal jammer, cutting Vorik's connection to the ship overhead. It worked, just long enough. Vorik lunged, blade drawn. But Cale met him halfway, not with force, but precision. He dodged, parried, countered. His movements were efficient, stripped of rage. Every strike meant something. It wasn't strength that gave Cale the edge, it was clarity. Vorik grew desperate. He struck with wild speed, but Cale caught his wrist mid-swing. His claw hovered at Vorik's throat. Eli expected him to finish it. But Cale released him. I don't need to destroy you, he said. You've already lost. Vorik fell back, stunned. He stared, searching for something in Cale's eyes that wasn't there anymore. Fear, shame, doubt. He found nothing. Cale turned and walked away. Eli followed, leaving Vorik kneeling in his own silence. Later, they returned to the shelter, but the space no longer felt the same. The threat was gone, but something fundamental had changed. Cale no longer looked at the world as something to hide from. He stood in open air, unafraid of eyes on him. He spoke to Eli that night with confidence. "I'm not going back into the shadows." Eli nodded. "Then we bring the light to them." His father arrived before midnight. He'd followed the readings, saw the wreckage of the fight, analyzed the DNA trails. He didn't speak at first. Then he looked at Cale and said, "You shouldn't exist. According to every record we have, you're a myth." Cale replied, "Then rewrite your records." It wasn't arrogance. It was truth. His father offered sanctuary, an official one. A facility where Cale could learn, grow, be studied, yes, but safely, with full rights. Eli looked at Cale for his decision. Not as his savior, not as his protector, but as his equal. Cale agreed, on one condition: Eli comes with him. They left before sunrise. No chains. No guards. No more hiding. Cale didn't escape his past. He confronted it. He didn't destroy his enemy. He defeated what they stood for. And in doing so, he claimed something the Draxel never gave him: a future. Cale's arrival at the research compound sparked chaos behind closed doors. Security protocols were rewritten. Dozens of scientists assembled under emergency clearance, all scrambling to comprehend what Eli had protected in secret. No one had seen a living Draxel outside formal treaties in years, and none had ever encountered a juvenile surviving beyond exile. The files that previously dismissed him as a genetic anomaly were now obsolete. He wasn't an error. He was a precedent. Eli stayed beside him through every test, every scan, every interview. Cale remained calm, dignified, but cautious. He allowed only what he consented to. He declined sedation. When he spoke, it was deliberate and controlled. Every answer shaped how humanity would perceive his species from now on. Within a week, whispers spread through the scientific community. A Draxel capable of moral reasoning. A hybrid of war-born biology and empathy-driven learning. Some called it evolution. Others called it danger. A few wanted to dissect the truth, literally. But Eli and his father had already brokered a contract. Cale was not a subject. He was a citizen under planetary asylum. Protected by human law. No forced procedures. No exploitation. Cale, for his part, began teaching. Not about biology or culture, but about survival. He described the unspoken laws of the Draxel, how failure was engineered, how exile was ritualized to purge deviation. He exposed the lie beneath their honor. It wasn't strength they prized, it was uniformity. Independence was punished because it threatened control. His words ignited debates across human and interstellar forums. Activists, ethicists, and diplomats weighed in. Could Cale's case force re-evaluation of Draxel human treaties? Was it interference or justice? For Cale, it was either. It was existence. He didn't ask for recognition. He demanded it. Eli watched the storm grow and kept Cale grounded. Despite the politics, Cale never lost himself. He still spent nights sketching in silence, still asked questions with wide-eyed intensity, still sought understanding more than approval. Eventually, an invitation arrived. Not from Earth, but from a dissident Draxel faction. Hidden voices within their rigid hierarchy had heard the story. They wanted to meet Cale. Not to recapture or punish, but to listen. Quiet rebels within a culture of silence. Cale didn't hesitate. "I don't want revenge," he told Eli. "I want them to see what they tried to erase." The diplomatic council opposed the meeting. Too risky. Too early. But Eli stood firm. Cale had earned the right to face his own people on his own terms. A private channel was established. A secured location arranged. Cale and Eli stood face to face with Draxel not armored or armed, but uncertain. They expected defiance or hatred. Instead, Cale offered truth. "I survived without you," I grew without fear. And I came back, not to beg for place, but to show you what you've lost. One elder asked the question none had dared. What are you now? Cale answered simply. More than what you left behind. The silence that followed wasn't rejection. It was reflection. Not all Draxel present agreed, but none walked away unchanged. A seed had been planted. Back on Earth, Cale continued to evolve. His biology adapted further, his voice more fluent, his movements refined. But his mind remained his sharpest trait. He took up study in human ethics, strategy, philosophy. He wanted to understand how humans survived not just through strength, but through stories, cooperation, legacy. He gave lectures, first small, then broadcasted. He never spoke of vengeance. Only of choice. Of breaking patterns. Of choosing growth over tradition. People listened, not because he was alien, but because he was honest. Eli began documenting everything. The story from the beginning. Not as a report, but as a record. Not of what Cale was, but who he had become. The book spread across schools, stations, colonies. Chains to Wings became more than a title, it became a movement. Years later, Cale stood under the same forest canopy where Eli had found him. Not broken. Not hunted. Free. I used to think survival was enough, he said. Now I know better. Eli asked. And what is it now? Cale looked toward the stars. Purpose. He didn't just survive abandonment. He redefined it. He didn't become what they expected. He became what they feared, a mind sharpened by pain, guided by compassion, loyal to no doctrine but truth. And because of that, he wasn't just the first. He wouldn't be the last.